Hello everyone. Today we're going to dive into the story of Robert Downey Jr. and the greatest comeback in Hollywood history. Presented by Filmora. Can you believe that someone who was once lost in drugs, prison, and completely shunned by Hollywood could go on to become the most iconic superhero in movie history? A man once deemed beyond saving by the entire entertainment industry somehow rose from the ashes to become a global icon, not only saving his own life, but also reviving an entire cinematic universe that was on the verge of collapse. It's an unbelievable journey, one that feels like it belongs in a movie, yet it's entirely real. The journey of Robert Downey Jr., a man who carried both darkness and light within him. A man who didn't just become Iron Man, but became the very soul of Marvel. In today's video, we'll take a deep dive into the turbulent life of Robert Downey Jr., from a troubled childhood to the heights of fame, then plummeting into the depths of addiction, before making a legendary comeback that left the whole world in awe. The childhood of Robert Downey Jr., between the light of art and the shadows of addiction. Robert Downey Jr. was born in 1965 in Manhattan, New York. As the son of director Robert Downey Sr. and actress Elsie Ford, young Robert grew up surrounded by art, where film sets were his playground and scripts were just another familiar toy. It seemed like he was destined for a vibrant, colorful childhood. But in reality, it was a stage veiled in both spotlight and shadow. Robert's father was a talented director, but also a heavy drug user. Growing up in a wild and uninhibited environment, young Robert was introduced to drugs for the first time at just 6 years old. It was a devastating turning point. Robert once said, "My father gave me drugs as a way to bond with me." His childhood was filled with parties, clouds of smoke, and long nights devoid of real affection. Even though he grew up in a world full of creativity, deep down, he was still a lost child. He appeared in several films from a very young age, but Robert always felt out of place, caught between fleeting fame and a life overflowing with temptation. While his peers led more stable lives, he struggled with drug dependency and a string of poor decisions, trapped in the shadow of a neglected child, starved of proper care and love. Young talent and early fame, 1980s, 1992. At just 20 years old, Robert Downey Jr. entered Hollywood like a breath of fresh air, bringing with him youth, talent, and a unique charm that no one could deny. In the 1980s, Robert began to gain attention with his early roles in notable films. One of his first performances was in Weird Science, 1985, a humorous sci-fi film directed by John Hughes. Although it wasn't a leading role, Robert's presence left a strong impression on audiences. He portrayed a style that was both innocent and quirky, a standout ability that he would continue to develop throughout his career. However, Robert's real breakthrough came in 1987 with Less Than Zero, where he played Julian, a young dreamer who falls victim to drug addiction. This role not only showcased his outstanding acting abilities, but also highlighted the complexity of the character's inner turmoil. Julian, a reflection of loss and suffering, made the audience deeply empathize with him. No vao dien suat entung trung less than zero. Robert Truthan mot trung hung nangoiso trianvonqua Hollywood. But the most memorable film of his early career was Chaplin, 1992. Robert portrayed Charlie Chaplin, a legend of world cinema, and in this role, he masterfully conveyed the complexities of the great artist's life. With his brilliant transformation in this role, Robert not only made a powerful impression, but also earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. In a Hollywood constantly searching for new talent, Robert Downey Jr. quickly emerged as a standout name. He became a symbol of creativity and a pioneering spirit, someone who constantly reinvented himself with every role. From an ambitious young man in Weird Science, to a deeply wounded character in Less Than Zero, and finally, to his brilliant transformation in Chaplin, Robert Downey Jr. won over both audiences and critics with his innate acting talent. At that time, Robert wasn't just a star. He was a new symbol of Hollywood, a young talent under the spotlight of the entire world. This early chapter of his life served as a solid stepping stone, helping him win the hearts of the public and build a strong foundation for a lasting film career. He proved that his talent couldn't be ignored, and he stood as one of the most promising stars in Hollywood throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Robert Downey Jr. and the dark years. From the bright lights of the silver screen, Robert Downey Jr. suddenly plunged into a dark abyss of drugs, alcohol, and long nights spiraling out of control. The period from 1996 to 2003 was not just a personal nightmare for Robert Downey Jr., but also the slow unraveling of a Hollywood star. He may have had it all: a thriving career, fame, recognized talent, and a bright future ahead. But behind the glamour, a frightening darkness was quietly growing. By the late 1990s, Robert's life had begun to spiral out of control. Despite a string of successful roles, he became increasingly consumed by dangerous indulgences. Though he was famous, Robert often felt empty and insecure, feelings that led him to turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to cope with the emotional turmoil inside. This path of self-destruction not only took a toll on his health, but also began to unravel the career he had worked so hard to build. Robert didn't just use drugs and alcohol. He became addicted to the excess, to the endless cycle of lavish escapism. All-night parties, reckless drinking, nights lost in smoke and stimulants. It all seemed to swallow him into a vicious cycle with no way out. He continued to take on film roles, but his mind no longer seemed present. He was distracted, late, and out of control throughout many productions. Things took a disastrous turn when Robert was arrested multiple times for possession of drugs, alcohol, and even a firearm. Each time he was arrested, he promised himself and the public that he would change, but he kept sinking deeper into addiction. Rehab stays, hospital visits, and repeated relapses only made things worse. In 1996, Robert was fired from the set of Ally McBeal after causing chaos on set due to his behavior. His career began to crumble as he was blacklisted from major projects, and soon it seemed like Hollywood had turned its back on him. He became seen as a lost cause in the eyes of many in the industry. But then, in 1999, the worst finally happened. Robert was arrested after a wild late-night car chase while driving under the influence, with a loaded gun in the vehicle. This time it wasn't just about drugs. He was also charged with illegal possession of a firearm. In the end, he spent nearly a year in prison, a long, dark year marked by self-betrayal and unforgettable pain. During those long nights in prison, Robert felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness, as if the world had abandoned him. He looked inward and began to ask himself whether he could still save what was left of him. It was a year of hardship, but also a year where he began to confront the man he had become. In 2001, when the prison gates finally closed behind him, Robert stepped back into the light. But it wasn't warm, it was cold, harsh and filled with doubt. He tried to start over, tried to wipe away the stains of the past. But the scars on his soul remained, silent and deep, not easily healed. Hollywood, the same place that once applauded the young and gifted Robert Downey Jr., now turned its back on him, without mercy. To them, he was no longer a brilliant actor, but an addict with a criminal record, a liability no one wanted to bet on. No scripts, no offers, not even a second chance. Only silence, suffocating and endless. And in that silence, under fading lights, Robert had to face the most painful question of his life. Does anyone still believe I'm worth believing it? The remarkable comeback. A name once crossed off by Hollywood, an addict, a repeat offender, a man branded as unfixable. The media wrote about his downfall as a cautionary tale for future generations. But just as the world turned its back, Robert began the greatest battle of his life, the battle against himself. It wasn't about a role. It wasn't a golden opportunity. It was day by day, night by night. Robert Downey Jr. fighting for his own survival. Recovery wasn't an easy choice. It was a war. Each morning, he woke to a heart screaming for the drugs it couldn't have. Each night he fell asleep to a body shaking, drenched in cold sweat, haunted by a terrifying emptiness. He threw up in the bathroom. He couldn't sleep. He collapsed. At times, even a passing breeze felt strong enough to break him. But he refused to let himself fall one more time. Robert let go of the drugs, walked away from the all-night parties, and shed the shattered pieces of his former self. The man who had lived in delusion and numbing pain. No more hallucinations, no more lies to himself. All that remained was a bare, fragile, wounded man. But with one powerful desire: to live. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live again. Perhaps that's what he once thought. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a rebirth, slow, painful, and bleeding. But he chose to keep moving forward. Even when his legs trembled, even when doubt filled his heart, he refused to let himself stop. In 2005, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang became a declaration. Robert Downey Jr. was back, and this time, more dangerous than ever. His role, full of wit, spontaneity, and sharp charm, served as a reminder that true talent never dies. It only sleeps, waiting for the right moment to explode. And then, fate brought him to Jon Favreau, the director of a project many saw as a risky gamble: Iron Man. Favreau saw what no one else dared to believe: a Robert who was broken yet brilliant, a man who had walked through hell and survived, just like Tony Stark. Marvel objected. The producers shook their heads, and the media laughed. To them, casting a former addict, an ex-convict, a man Hollywood had once completely abandoned, as a superhero? It was absurd, even insane. But Jon Favreau, the director of Iron Man, didn't laugh. He saw what the rest of the world had overlooked: a man who had hit rock bottom, but hadn't let go. Favreau bet his entire career on that choice. He didn't just choose an actor. He chose a man who was fighting every day with every breath to prove he deserved a second chance. And Robert Downey Jr., stripped of the spotlight, the privileges, with only fragile hope and the heart of a warrior who had lost everything, stepped into the role that would define him: Tony Stark, a brilliant, arrogant genius, but also a deeply wounded man who had destroyed his own life and rebuilt it from the ashes. Iron Man wasn't just Robert Downey Jr.'s comeback. It was the rebirth of both the man and the myth. No one could have predicted that this decision would go on to change the course of cinematic history. From a castaway, Robert Downey Jr. became the beating heart of the Marvel Empire, and the world once again had no choice but to look up to him. 5. I am Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. didn't just create a legendary character. He created an icon. Iron Man wasn't just the first superhero of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. He was the embodiment of Robert's fiery rebirth. From a cast-off failure, he rose to become the soul, the heartbeat, and the trailblazing torch of the most powerful cinematic empire of the 21st century. The world didn't just witness a comeback. It witnessed a miraculous rebirth. A warrior emerging from the ashes, carrying both his scars and his light. Robert Downey Jr. didn't play Iron Man. He is Iron Man, sharp as a blade, rebellious in a way that's irresistible, courageous, complex, and deeply flawed. Everything that defines Tony Stark is also what defines Robert. There was no longer a line between the character and the actor. No more acting, only a chillingly perfect fusion. This wasn't a role, it was destiny. A rare oneness between man and myth. And in that moment, cinematic history was rewritten. From that very moment, Robert Downey Jr. ascended to a height that only a rare few in history have ever reached. He was no longer a name tied to scandal, sin, or a shattered past. He became a symbol. a living testament to rebirth. A hero, not just on screen, but in the story of his own life. Robert didn't just save Tony Stark, he saved himself. And in doing so, he revived an entire cinematic universe that was on the brink of collapse, turning it into a blazing legend. With unshakable will and unwavering resolve, Robert Downey Jr. redefined what the word comeback truly means. This wasn't a return to acting. It was a return to become immortal, from the explosive beginning of Iron Man to the tragic triumph of Avengers. Endgame, he didn't just appear, he was the soul. He made the entire world rise to its feet and applaud, not for the special effects, not for the suit of armor, but for the extraordinary strength of a man who dared to rise from the ashes of his own life. That wasn't acting. That was victory. That was immortality, born from the heart. Verse 6. Legacy beyond the screen. Robert Downey Jr. today is not just a movie star. He is a living symbol of redemption, of the strength of the human spirit when facing darkness. When people look at Robert, they don't just see a sharp, witty Tony Stark. They see a man who once lost everything, and then, through sheer will and unwavering determination, took it all back, piece by piece. No, he is living proof that failure does not define a person. It's how they rise that forges a legend. In a world full of temptation and collapse, Robert stands as a rare light, a reminder that no darkness is too great if we refuse to give up on ourselves. Today, he continues to take part in meaningful film projects, but no longer chases the spotlight. He chooses a quieter life, spending time with his family, with Susan, his unwavering partner, and dedicating himself to quiet but powerful acts of charity. Robert uses his own life story to inspire, to reach out and help those still trapped in the same shadows that once nearly consumed him. I am living proof that anyone can change. All it takes is the will and the fight to see it through. Far beyond the silver screen, Robert Downey Jr. has become an icon, a real-life hero. Not because he once played Iron Man, but because he had the courage to become himself, imperfect, yet never defeated. If Robert Downey Jr.'s story has inspired you, if you felt the strength in his journey through the darkness, don't forget to share this video. Let stories like this spread, because anyone can change, as long as we believe in ourselves and never give up. And if you want to keep discovering incredible stories of Hollywood legends and stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about Robert's story. Did it make you feel like you too can be stronger and overcome life's challenges just like he did? Which story would you like me to tell next? Thank you for watching, and always remember, nothing is impossible if you're willing to change.